horrible choices. And Republicans owned every bit of it because of the way they voted today. Shameful. Shame on them.
They just want a political issue. They just want to campaign on saying that the reason health care costs are going up is because Republicans, which is abjectly false. They created Obamacare. They created the 221% increase in premiums, not Republicans.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill remain divided. Guess that's not news. But the best way to prevent millions of Americans from seeing significant health care price hikes in the new year depends on whether they can get an agreement. And that after the Senate failed to advance either of the two competing plans yesterday. Former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, I guess, once more into the breach. Here go the Republicans to try to deal with health care. It has been just, to me, a tragedy of communications for almost 20 years. And here they go right back into the trap.
That is true. But if you listen to what Senator Schumer was saying, he was literally acknowledging Obamacare has failed. It's made health care too expensive. It's not good delivery. There's not quality. You couldn't keep your doctor. But what we're looking back is now we're on a deadline that the Democrats set up for America. But there hasn't been communicated to the American public. We're a couple weeks away from about 24 million that they're going to see their premiums go up. So do you give an extension while you go and fix it? The difficult part is when you look back when you're in the majority, it doesn't matter who creates it. You're going to own it. So you've got to plan ahead. Shutting that government down for 2 months, which the Democrats did, was a big mistake. But keeping Republicans away from the majority or working on this issue ahead of time now could come back to haunt us. Healthcare is a very difficult issue. It takes up a large portion of the economy. You can't just throw something out a few weeks before and think you're going to be able to fix this problem. And this hasn't been good politically for Republicans. And when we look at the last couple of elections, this is a time that you should take notice and make a correction before the November election comes. It's going to be about the economy and healthcare. The Democrats want this to expire. They do not want it to be extended. You watch, they're making every difficult. They know there's fraud. They know it's failed. And they don't want to have any change or improvement to this.
Yes, Speaker Johnson says that they are going to try to vote on a package next week and then to expect more in January and February. And you can imagine President Trump will have to spend some time on this in the State of the Union as well. Also wanted to ask you about this because redistricting is an issue that we started to talk about early in the year. President Trump and his team said, Republicans, we should figure out a way to maximize the number of seats that we can get. And Texas went forward. One court said no. The appeals court said yes, those maps can stand, and you can see them there. So a few Republican pickups possibly there. But it hasn't all gone according to plan because California, an effort I know you know well, they're going to go forward. Indiana decided not to do so yesterday. So in the overall scheme of things, how do things look for Republicans or Democrats going into the 2026 elections when it comes to this redistricting effort?
It doesn't look like it's going to give anybody advantage, but I remember being on your show way back at the beginning of the year, and I said, you asked me, what is the thing we should be watching long-term? Redistricting. Look, I'm opposed to going about doing the way California did or others. And my very first day in the state legislature in California, I introduced legislation to make it a commission. I think competition is the best way to go. The people should decide who their representatives are. In California, you're now going to have 94% all Democrats, even though 40% of the vote goes to Republicans. And you know where the most Republicans live in the United States? In California. But they're going to lose representation just because Gavin wants to run for president. Go out and put a better idea, get better candidates. Look, when Nancy Pelosi was elected Speaker, I was elected Republican leader. In 4 more years, we became the majority by 5 seats. We won 5 seats in California, not by changing lines, but by getting better candidates. We ended up with the most Republican women, the most Republican minorities. We won seats in New York. We won in difficult places because we had better messengers and a better plan. I always think America wins when there's competition.
When you look ahead right now to next November, do you have a feeling on whether Republicans can hold on to the majority in the House and Senate?
Look, if I take the New Jersey and Virginia races, then I look at that Georgia state race, it's going to be very difficult. But November's a ways away. You are in the majority. You control what can come to the floor. You control what the agenda can be. Stop the bickering internally. Turn this around. Focus on the economy. Focus on the things that affect people day to day, from their safety, from their education, from their health care. And yes, Republicans can keep the majority.
Okay. Kevin McCarthy, great to see you. If I don't see
Dawn had barely broken over Normandy, and yet history had already begun choosing its heroes. Not the ones carved into statues, not the ones whose names fill textbooks, but the invisible ones, the silent ones. The ones whose courage never made it past the wind. This is their part of the story. The radio ghosts. On a makeshift command boat floating just miles from Omaha's burning sands, a 22-year-old radio man named Elliot Marsh was losing his hearing to chaos. Every channel, every frequency was screaming. Red Dog 3, we have no visual. Repeat, no visual. Sector Charlie overwhelmed. Request immediate. Thunder 6, come in. God, there are bodies everywhere. But in the avalanche of radio panic, Elliot kept searching, scrolling, filtering. Listened not for the loudest voices, but for the quiet ones. Because the quiet ones were the ones that mattered. A whisper of intel. A fragment of a call sign. A half-broken code from a squad still alive. This was the unspoken war behind